welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're embarking on a really fascinating exploration.
Yeah, into something you probably use every single day, but maybe haven't given a ton of thought to.
Exactly. It's this surprising connection between your voice, your personality, and some really ancient mind-body practices.
That's right. Your voice, it's so unique, isn't it? You hear someone, a loved one, and instantly you know who it is just from the sound.
Totally. But what if it's like more than just a way to tell people apart?
Uh-huh. What if it tells you something deeper?
And that's really what we're diving into for you today. Our sort of mission here is to understand how your voice can act as a window, a window into your inner self.
Revealing things you might not even be consciously aware of.
Right. And maybe even more compelling, we want to explore how you might actually be able to intentionally influence your voice.
For personal growth, yeah.
Well,
Drawing on, well, both science and this ancient wisdom.
exactly. We've been looking at research on voice characteristics and personality, but also descriptions of practices like pranayam, yoga, meditation. It's quite a mix.
It really is. And what's kind of remarkable is this core idea. Your voice isn't just a communication tool. It's dynamic.
A reflection of who you are. A window to the self, as some of the sources actually put it.
And the exciting part, the part that really grabbed me, is that you probably have more influence over this window than you think.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit. This unique vocal signature we all seem to have.
Mm-hmm.
What actually makes it up?
Well, think of your vocal signature as a blend of key elements. First off, there's pitch.
Okay.
How high or low your voice generally sits.
Okay.
Then you've got tone or timbre. That's the quality, the texture. Is it kind of raspy, smooth, feathery, bright? It's the color of the sound.
Timbre.
Then your speech rate, just how fast or slow you tend to talk. And volume, obviously loudness. And finally, there's this whole area of paralinguistics that covers like all the emotional inflections, the intonation, the rhythm, everything that adds meaning beyond the actual words.
Like sarcasm or excitement.
Exactly. Same words, totally different meaning based on how you say it. That's paralinguistics.
It really is almost like a sonic fingerprint then, isn't it?
Hmm.
The sources definitely highlight how incredibly individual these signatures are.
Absolutely.
And I noticed there's even more specific terminology, things like vocal range, tessitura. I think that's the comfortable singing range.
Yeah, where the voice sounds best, plus your everyday speech voice, and even this idea of vocal weight, like how heavy or light a voice sounds.
Okay, so that's the what. Now, the really interesting part, the link to personality. How does psychology connect these vocal traits to how we're perceived?
Well, this is where it gets fascinating. Research has started to show some links. For instance, people with lower, maybe huskier voices, they're often perceived as more dominant.
That kind of makes intuitive sense, doesn't it? You think of, like, authority figures. But is there a reason why? Is it biological or?
Some theories point towards maybe evolutionary biology, lower frequencies potentially signaling physical size or strength, but, it's complex. More research is definitely needed there.
Okay.
On the flip side, the sources suggest that voices with a lot of emotional inflection, lots of ups and downs, that might lead listeners to perceive the speaker as having higher neuroticism.
Interesting. So a very expressive voice isn't always seen positively then. What about volume? Does louder mean more outgoing?
Often, yeah. Those who speak louder, who project more, are frequently linked to higher extroversion in studies.
Okay.
And then you have voices that are more melodic, almost like they have a natural musicality.
Yeah.
Those can be associated with perceptions of higher agreeableness. People might find them more pleasing, more approachable.
I remember seeing a specific study mention, one that actually measured pitch objectively.
Ah, yes.
And it found a correlation between lower pitch and self-reported extroversion, dominance, and even sociosexuality in both men and women.
That's the one. They did touch on a possible hormonal basis, like maybe testosterone playing a role in men.
Well,
But for women, the mechanism seems less clear, needs more investigation. Still, it's a tangible link between the physical voice and these internal self-reported traits.
and it seems to go both ways, too. The sources mention voice disorders, like dysphonia, where the voice quality or pitch is affected, and those have been linked to lower conscientiousness and higher levels of depression and anxiety. It really suggests this deep interplay.
It really does. Mind, body, voice, it's all connected.
So how fast do we actually make these judgments? When we hear someone speak, how quickly do we form these personality impressions? It sounds like it's almost instant.
It pretty much is. Listeners are, well, remarkably quick at picking up vocal cues and forming first impressions.
Right.
There's even this idea researchers talk about, a kind of trustworthy index of a voice.
A trustworthy index. What makes a voice sound trustworthy according to that?
Well, the characteristics they found associated with perceived trustworthiness included a lower average pitch, a clearer tone, meaning less sort of background noise or rasp in the signal,
Okay.
and a slightly faster speech rate.
Huh. Lower, clearer, and faster. That's maybe not what I would have guessed. Why faster?
Well, one thought is that a moderate pace can suggest confidence, clarity of thought, not too hesitant, but also not sounding rushed or anxious.
Right. Makes sense. And lower pitch maybe conveys stability.
Potentially, yeah, authority, stability. But these are just initial perceptions, of course. Context matters hugely.
Always. And pitch seems key for other things too, right? Like higher pitch maybe sounds more cheerful.
Sometimes associated with cheerfulness, energy, yeah. While lower pitches might come across as more serious.
And speech rate too, you mentioned faster for trustworthiness, but it also affects other things.
Definitely. A slower pace can work well for complex information, helps people process it, while a faster pace can signal urgency or excitement.
But then you get into those trickier qualities, like creaky voice, or nasal, or breathy. The sources said perceptions there can be all over the place.
Exactly. Super varied, even contradictory sometimes, like a creaky voice, think vocal fry. Some studies link it to professionalism, maybe even genuineness in some contexts. Others associate it with boredom or sadness.
Wow, okay. Big difference.
Huge. And a breathy voice in women, for instance, has sometimes been linked to higher perceived sexuality. But then an extremely low, creaky voice might give an impression of low self-confidence.
So it's really a tapestry of perceptions. Context is everything.
Absolutely everything.
And there was that striking point about male CEOs with lower voices tending to earn more.
Right, suggesting that perceived link between a lower pitch and authority or leadership qualities.
And this seems really important. These snap judgments we make based on voice aren't always accurate, are they? They don't always match the person's actual self-reported personality.
Not at all. That's a crucial caveat. Perceptions are powerful, but they aren't necessarily truth.
Okay. Now, let's dig a bit more into speech rate.
Yeah.
It sounded like there were more nuances there than just fast or slow.
Yeah, definitely. Some research, for example, suggests that individuals who lean towards perceiving rather than judging, in frameworks like Myers-Briggs, they might tend to speak a bit faster. And extroverts often have quicker reaction times in conversation, which could also show up as a faster pace.
And it sounds like there's maybe a sweet spot for how speech rate is perceived.
Exactly. Generally, a moderate to slightly faster rate seems to be perceived as indicating more competence, maybe more social attractiveness.
Going too fast.
Yeah, speaking too rapidly can backfire. You risk sounding anxious or impatient, maybe even like you lack empathy because you're rushing.
Right.
Interestingly, for perceiving benevolence, kindness, essentially there seems to be an inverted U-shape. A normal rate hits highest on perceived benevolence. Too slow or too fast drops off.
So finding that balance is key, not just for clarity, but for how your character comes across. And it impacts other things too, like persuasion.
Yes, definitely. Speech rate can influence perceptions of extroversion, conscientiousness, how persuasive you seem, your overall communication skills. It's subtle, but it's powerful.
Okay, let's switch gears slightly to vocal tone. The sources called it unique as a fingerprint. That's quite a statement.
It really is. And it just highlights how personal our tone is. Think about all the words we use. Appealing, brittle, warm, flat, dead. Each one paints a picture, gives the listener a real sense of your underlying state or maybe even personality. In pretty much any interaction, your tone carries so much weight, often more than the words themselves.
And the science behind it's pretty cool too, right?
That's
It's about
it.
harmonics.
Exactly. It's rooted in those extra frequencies that resonate above the main pitch. And the unique shape and structure of your body, your throat, your nasal passages, your chest cavity, actually influences which harmonics are stronger.
Okay.
That's what gives your voice its unique color, its texture.
And it's why we hear ourselves differently than others hear us, because of bone conduction.
That's a big part of it, yeah. Bone conduction tends to boost the lower frequencies when you hear your own voice. But however it's perceived, your tone is just a massive vehicle for emotion, for unspoken intentions. Listeners often react more strongly to the tone than the content.
Makes total sense. You can say, I'm fine, but if the tone is off, well, everyone knows you're not fine.
Exactly. Finally, let's touch on volume loudness. What does that communicate?
Okay.
Well, the obvious things. Louder can signal urgency, confidence, power, maybe anger. Softer can suggest intimacy, discretion, warmth, secrecy.
But the research had some surprises there too, didn't it?
It did. One study found that while louder speakers were seen as more aggressive, they weren't necessarily seen as more self-assured, which is interesting. And speaking more softly was actually linked to perceptions of maturity and sincerity.
That is a bit counterintuitive. You'd sort of assume louder equals more confident.
You might, yeah. But maybe softness implies thoughtfulness or less need to dominate. It's complex.
There was something about singers.
Oh, right. In healthy singers, a higher average sound pressure level, basically, a measure of loudness or vocal strength, was actually linked with overall well-being.
So maybe a strong, well-supported voice reflects a kind of vitality.
Possibly, yeah. A healthy instrument, maybe a healthy person using it appropriately. So, okay, we've kind of mapped out the voice itself, the mechanics, the perceptions. Now let's shift focus. How can these ancient practices actually influence this amazing instrument?
Right. Starting with the absolute foundation, breath.
Pranayam.
Pranayam, the yogic science of breath control. Our sources really nail it. Breath is the fundamental energy source for your voice.
Makes perfect sense. No breath, literally no sound.
Precisely. And how you breathe directly impacts your vocal power, your range, your stability, everything.
And science is actually starting to back this up now, isn't it?
It really is, which is just exciting. For example, Brahmari Pranayama, that's the humming bee breath.
Studies have shown it can improve things like how long you can hold a note, your airflow, your glottal pressure, even the average pitch and resonance, especially noted in prospective singers.
Wow, that's specific. So it's not just feeling calmer, it's measurable vocal changes.
Exactly, tangible stuff. And the sources break down several different pranayam techniques, each with its own kind of flavor or benefit for the voice.
Like Brahmari, again, the humming. It's good for resonance, you said, but also stress.
Yeah, the vibration itself is thought to be key. It might stimulate the vagus nerve, which helps calm the nervous system, reduces stress, anxiety, and traditionally it's linked to the throat chakra, Vishuddhi.
Interesting. What else?
Well, there's Ujjayi Pranayama, the ocean breath. That's often said to restore vocal vitality, calm the mind. It might also help improve lung capacity and overall breath control.
And Nadi Shodhana, alternate nostril breathing. That seems more about balance.
Exactly. It's believed to harmonize the nervous system, clear energy channels. The potential vocal benefit there might be a smoother, more even delivery. Less shaky, perhaps.
Okay, and just basic diaphragmatic breathing, belly breathing.
Crucial. Absolutely fundamental. That deep breathing gives you controlled exhalation, more air capacity, which leads to a fuller, more resonant voice.
Makes sense.
Even something like lion's breath samhasana, where you stick your tongue out and exhale forcefully,
Yeah.
that's aimed at releasing tension in the jaw, face, and throat muscles, which, frees things up for more expressive speech.
It really seems like each technique targets something specific, either the mechanics or the underlying state. And you mentioned stress reduction. That must have a huge indirect effect.
Oh, absolutely. When you're stressed or anxious, you tense up, right? Including the tiny muscles around your vocal cords. So pranayam's ability to calm the mind, reduce anxiety research shows it does this, even changing activity in brain regions tied to emotion that directly translates to less vocal tension.
Leading to a more relaxed, maybe more authentic sound.
Exactly. Which in turn might influence how others perceive you, maybe more confident, more agreeable, less neurotic.
Okay, so breath is the engine. What about movement? How does yoga practice contribute to vocal freedom?
Well, yoga is so holistic, isn't it? It connects body and voice through posture, flexibility, strength. You see clear parallels between yoga and, say, singing training, both heavily emphasize posture and breath control.
Right. And the sources mention specific poses.
Oh, yes, definitely. Things that open the chest poses like cobra, camel pose. They improve posture, physically expand the rib cage.
Letting you breathe deeper.
Exactly. Fuller breaths mean better resonance, more control. Then you have neck and shoulder releases, maybe gentle movements like in cat-cow pose.
Releasing tension.
Precisely. Tension in the neck and shoulders directly impacts the vocal tract. Releasing it allows for a freer, more open sound.
And core strength. That seemed maybe less obvious, but it was mentioned.
Yeah, it's surprisingly important. Poses like plank that strengthen your core muscles, they provide better support for diaphragmatic breathing.
Okay, so better support means more power.
More power, better projection, more stamina, and even grounding poses like tree pose. They help with mental clarity, focus, confidence. That translates into more assured speaking.
So it's really about building the right physical container for the voice.
Yeah.
And the confidence to use it. And like pranayam, yoga helps with stress too.
For sure. Stress equals physical tension, often held in the jaw, neck, shoulders, all impacting the voice. Yoga helps release that.
Right.
There's tons of anecdotal evidence, people reporting better breath awareness, less speaking anxiety, even clearer articulation after practicing yoga.
And emotionally too.
Yeah, the emotional regulation that can come from a consistent yoga practice that helps you speak from a more stable, authentic place, which again might shift perceptions, maybe less perceived neuroticism, more agreeableness.
It really is all woven together. Okay, breath, movement.
Yeah.
What about stillness?
Yeah.
Meditation. How does that play into finding an authentic voice?
Mindfulness meditation is huge here.
Yeah.
It's primarily a tool for self-awareness and tension reduction, both absolutely key for an authentic voice.
Because stress tightens the vocal cords.
Exactly. As we said, that physical tightening happens. It can even lead to conditions like muscle tension dysphonia.
Wow.
And interestingly, some preliminary research even suggests meditation, maybe combined with gentle vocal stuff, might actually help promote the healing of vocal fold tissue itself.
That's pretty amazing. So it's potentially physical healing too.
Potentially, yeah. But the main thing is awareness. Mindfulness makes you aware of where you're holding tension so you can consciously choose to release it.
Okay.
It also sharpens your awareness of your breathing habits, your go-to vocal patterns. You start to notice them.
And some people report a quieter inner chatter.
Yes, that too, leading to more mental clarity. Personally, I've definitely found that the increased breath awareness and reduced speaking nerves from meditation help with clearer speech, better articulation.
So by becoming more aware internally, you gain more control externally.
That's the idea. Heightened self-awareness empowers you to notice and maybe modify vocal habits that aren't serving you. Plus, meditation is a powerful tool for regulating emotions, anxiety, nervousness that directly color your vocal delivery.
And even short sessions can help.
Studies suggest so, yeah. Even brief mindfulness practice can improve emotional state, physical state, and even how people perceive their own voice afterwards.
So ultimately, it helps you speak from a more grounded, authentic place.
Exactly. Which, again, feeds back into how your personality might be perceived by others across various traits.
Okay, so we've got breath, movement, stillness, all shaping the voice and potentially perception. Now, how do we consciously use these practices to transform things, to change our inner and outer voice?
Well, by consistently practicing pranayam, yoga, meditation, you develop the capacity to intentionally influence those vocal characteristics. We talked about pitch, tone, rate, volume.
So you could consciously try to align your voice with how you want to come across.
You could. For example, knowing lower pitch is often linked to dominance, these practices might help you find and comfortably use a lower, more resonant part of your natural range, not forcing it, but discovering it.
Or slowing down if you tend to rush when nervous.
Precisely. Mindfulness helps you notice that tendency, and breath control gives you the tool to moderate your pace, projecting more competence, perhaps.
But the sources were clear.
Yeah.
It's not just about faking it on the outside, right?
Yeah.
True transformation needs inner work.
Absolutely crucial. It's about cultivating that inner awareness, that self-understanding, alongside any outward adjustments. You can't just paste on a confident voice.
Yeah.
But what's really cool is that your voice can also become a tool to regulate your own state. Using calming breath work doesn't just sound calm, it can actually make you feel calmer.
Ah, so it works both ways.
It does. And as you start to feel these improvements, better voice quality, better emotional regulation, your self-confidence naturally gets a boost.
And that increased confidence, that probably snowballs, doesn't it?
Exactly. More self-assurance often leads to behavioral changes. You act differently, more confidently, and that leads to a genuine shift in how your personality is perceived, because it is shifting.
It becomes a positive feedback loop.
Totally. Better vocal control, better emotional well-being, more confidence, different behavior, leading to a more authentic expression of who you are.
This is incredibly empowering stuff. So
Yeah.
for someone listening now thinking, okay, this sounds great, but where do I start? What are some practical first steps?
Yeah, keep it simple to start. For pranayam, maybe try Nadi Shodhana, alternate nostril breathing, just 5-10 minutes a day, or Brahmari, the humming breath, same duration.
Okay, manageable chunks.
For yoga, don't feel you need to do an hour-long power class. Look for beginner-friendly sequences focused on gentle chest openers, maybe some simple neck rolls and shoulder releases.
Lots of resources online for that, I imagine.
Tons. And for meditation, start short. 5 or 10 minutes of just focusing on your breath or using a guided body scan meditation. Apps are great for this, lots of free options.
And beyond specific exercises, just paying more attention day to day.
Huge. Just start noticing your own voice in conversation. What's your pitch like when you're happy versus stressed? How fast do you talk? What's your usual volume? What tone comes out? That self-observation alone is incredibly insightful.
Okay, so pulling it all together then, the big takeaway seems to be your voice is way more than just how you talk.
Yeah, it's a powerful indicator of what's going on inside you. And maybe more importantly, it's something you actually have some agency over. You can shape it.
Right. These practices, pranayam, yoga, meditation, they offer pathways to cultivate a more authentic, more confident way of expressing yourself.
Both in how you sound and just how you show up in the world.
So on that note, maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. How might becoming more aware of your own voice start to unlock new sides of your personality, things you maybe haven't fully seen before?
And how could intentionally working with your breath, your body, your mind,
Yeah.
how could that reshape not just how you sound, but how you feel inside, and ultimately how the world perceives you?
It's a pretty profound connection to explore.
Hope you like our video. To join our refreshing yoga and meditation sessions, WhatsApp or call at given number. And don't forget to share, comment, and subscribe us. Thanks.